Welcome to my travel video regarding the Basilica of the Annunciation of the Blessed Virgin Mary, also known as the Otranto Cathedral. The Otranto Cathedral is located in the seaside town of Otranto on the Salento Peninsula in the region of Puglia in southern Italy. The cathedral was built in 1068 on the site of an ancient Roman domus and early temple. It was constructed in Byzantine and Romanesque style by the Normans. In this video, I'll discuss the history, architecture, and symbolism housed within the Otranto Cathedral. I'll also present the musings of several authors and researchers regarding symbolism. The interior plan of the church is a Latin cross. It has a central nave and two aisles that are separated by 12 arches, which are supported by 14 granite columns, each with a different capital. The central ceiling is in Moorish style with wooden coffers. The Otranto Cathedral is famous for a floor mosaic depicting the Tree of Life. The mosaic was commissioned by the first Latin archbishop of the city, John Natas, and was executed in 1163 to 1165 by a group of artists headed by Pantaleon, a Basilian monk from the monastery of San Nicola di Casole, located a few kilometers south of Otranto. In fact, the name Pantaleon is set in the mosaic itself, commemorating his contribution. The mosaic is 600 meters and covers the central nave and the two aisles of the cathedral. In the Tree of Life floor mosaic, Pantaleon tells the story of humanity. At the center is the Tree of Life and the Garden of Eden. The tree is a symbol of the Logos, of God's Word, the universal divine reason, and from it all the cultures that have influenced European culture are displayed. Each branch of the tree has a story to tell and experiences to highlight. It speaks of pre-Christianity, Christianity. There are depictions of the zodiac, the months of the year, vices and virtues, heaven and hell, biblical patriarchs, history, literature, mythology, animals, demonology, and angelology. The different sections on the Tree of Life floor mosaic will be reviewed from an esoteric, astrotheological, and philosophical perspective. The Otranto Cathedral floor plan is as follows. The left aisle houses the Hell and Paradise floor mosaic and the baptismal font. The center of the cathedral houses the altar, the presbyter with the 16 vices and virtues of man floor mosaic, and the central nave with the Tree of Life floor mosaic. The right aisle houses the Chapel of the Martyrs, the crypt, and the Tree of Redemption floor mosaic. We'll begin in the center of the cathedral, and then move over to the left aisle, and finally, the right aisle. In the presbyter are 16 circular medallions depicting humans, animals, mythical beasts, and mythological creatures. This includes King Solomon, Adam and Eve, Echidna, a Greek mythological monster that is half snake and half woman, a unicorn, and other depictions which exemplify living in harmony as symbolized by the donkey in the center playing music. The donkey is playing a musical instrument called a lyre. It's a type of harp much used by the ancients. The image of a donkey is prominent in Romanesque architecture and design. The story of the donkey playing a lyre derives from a mix of cultures, including Egyptian, Roman, and Greek cultures, which traces its roots to an ancient rite of passage, a religious initiation rite of the Isis cult. The donkey playing a lyre serves as an interlude in the larger narrative of a novel by Apuleius titled The Metamorphosis of Apuleius, also known as The Golden Ass. It explores themes of transformation, identity, and the human condition. A character called Lucius is transformed into a donkey after taking a magical potion. He stumbles upon a lyre lying in a field. Despite being a donkey, the animal attempts to play the instrument with its hoof, producing a beautiful sound. This scene serves as a commentary on the themes of curiosity, greed, and transformation. The donkey's unexpected musical talent highlights the idea that even in a state of transformation, one's innate abilities or qualities can still shine through. The lyre, an instrument often associated with poetry, music, and the muses, symbolizes the enduring power of creativity and artistic expression, even in the face of adversity. Golden refers to good character, where even in animal form, Lucius retains a spark of humanity, serving as an allegorical metaphor for the human experience. The novel also pokes fun at the excesses and vices of ancient Roman society and aristocracy through Lucius's misadventures, symbolizing the corrupting influence of wealth, power, and desire. The donkey, along with the 16 circular medallions depicting the vices and virtues of man, display that in life, man can reach equilibrium, referred to in philosophy as the golden mean, the middle way, where creation lives in harmony and balance. Here we have an aerial view of the central nave Tree of Life floor mosaic. Starting at the top, on the right-hand side, there is the Garden of Eden and Adam and Eve, followed by the months and the zodiac, Noah and the flood, Tower of Babel, a game of chess motif, and the Huntress Diana. Starting at the top of the left-hand side is King Arthur and Cain and Abel. The months and zodiac, Noah and the flood, animals and mythological creatures, followed by Alexander the Great, and elephants at the base of the tree. We'll start at the top of the Tree of Life mosaic on the left-hand side, where we find two depictions of Adam and Eve. book of Genesis of the Hebrew Bible, or the Christian Old Testament, chapters 1 through 5, and the second narrative, God fashions Adam from dust and places him in the Garden of Eden. Adam is told that he can eat freely of all the trees in the garden, except for a tree of knowledge of good and evil. Subsequently, Eve is created from one of Adam's ribs to be his companion. They are innocent and unembarrassed about their nakedness. However, a serpent convinces Eve to eat fruit from the forbidden tree, and she gives some of the fruit to Adam. These acts not only give them additional knowledge, but also give them the ability to conjure negative and destructive concepts, such as shame and evil. God later curses the serpent and the ground. God prophetically tells the woman and the man what will be the consequences of their sin of disobeying God. Then he banishes them from the Garden of Eden. Before I elaborate on the symbolism of Adam and Eve and the Genesis creation story, it is important to be aware of the stellar cult, which was one of the oldest religious institutions in the world, the ancient mystery schools. The stellar cult taught astrology and geomancy, that the earth was a living being and that you are an extension of the earth, that you and nature are one. The Christian religion has tried to cleanse their version in order to downplay its pagan elements, but no matter how you sanitize it, it won't work. It all links back to man is looking for who he is and why he is here. He is looking at it every day and doesn't realize it. This is why the stellar cult used a lot of organic nature symbolism. Also, the stellar cult were looking at the heavens because the heavens governed the earth below, because it creates the seasons, it creates the crops that grow, and later on, the heavenly bodies could be used for divination. It has been a staple of religions, theologies, for thousands of years. This is why many Druidic mystery schools were outdoors. Today, we have churches. The church tried to sanitize the pagan elements out, but can't completely because it all links back to Egyptian paganism or Druidic paganism, and there's nothing that can be done about that. You can see it in the edifices and the mosaics and the lapidary symbolism of Christian churches. Occult researcher and author Michael Tsarian advises in his books and DVD series titled Astrotheology and Sidereal Mythology, Irish Origins of Civilization, and its appendices, the Trees of Life, why ancient goddess worship is important to the creation story in Genesis, the Tree of Life, and in tree worship. Many scholars have discovered that the book of Genesis is a retelling of earlier stories from Sumerian, Babylonian, Egyptian, and Druidic origins. In those stories, the female is the tree. In the Christian religion, God is the tree. God speaks through the tree. God identifies with the tree. The tree is his personal property. He's forbidding the primal parents from going anywhere near it. Well, in the original stories and myths, Eve is the tree. The female either is the tree or the female's consort, sexual partner, or husband is the tree. So what does this do, then, to the Genesis story in Christianity when you take Eve, or whatever temptress-type character who's in league with the evil one and actually make her the tree, if not the voice of God, or she is the consort of the tree. The culture of Sumer is at least 7,000 years old. The stories of the goddesses, the tree of life, and the serpent are older than the biblical story. The goddess Ninmah from Sumer in Mesopotamia can be seen represented with the tree of life and the serpent. She sits on the throne as the main deity with the raised upward serpent behind her and the tree of life in front of her. With her hand extended, she offers the fruit of life, resurrection, or life eternal to the male figure sitting on the other side of the tree of life, possibly her consort. The goddess Inanna, also known as Ishtar in Assyria, is portrayed dancing with a snake and the tree of life, and is said to represent the axis between the matter and spirit. Some scholars argue that this represents the celestial pole that connects heaven and earth and can be traced to early Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the goddesses. In ancient Egyptian mythology, the tree of life is deeply connected to Isis and the serpent. The serpent in Egyptian mythology is a symbol of wisdom, rebirth, and regeneration. Its association with Isis highlights her role as a protector and nurturer. The tree, with its branches reaching towards the heavens and roots deep in the earth, embodies the cyclical nature of life, death, and rebirth. Joseph Campbell, writer and professor of literature who worked on comparative mythology and comparative religion, advised, in his book Occidental Mythology, that in Eve's scene at the tree, nothing is said to indicate that the serpent who appeared and spoke to her was a deity in his own right, who had been revered in the Levant for at least 7,000 years before the composition of the Book of Genesis. The next question then is, who is Adam? In the Hebrew Bible, Adam is the firstborn of God. He's literally the God to be. He's going to be the being that's before the sin, before the fall. He's God's chosen one, who's going to go into the world and own the creation. In the original myths and stories, the Adam figure is born from the woman. The Adam character is the offspring of the female and the god. Why is it that the female is seen in a lot of iconography close to the tree? The tree represented the figure of higher intelligence. So even those who believe in a god, or that the ancients believed in a god, the symbol of their god was the tree, various types of trees. That is why Elohim means tree, the elm tree specifically. That's why Yahweh, Jehovah, represents a tree, specifically the yew tree. And that's why Moses meets God at a burning bush. Michael Tessarian advises that the Church of Scotland has iconography of a burning bush inside a vagina-shaped Vesica Pisces. The priests of the churches and the higher Masonic levels know all about this. That is because the female was the actual original oracle. The study even of general mythology reveals this. For example, in mythology, Adonis was born from a tree, and if the goddess is the tree, that would explain how the god is born from the tree. Simple common sense would tell us that men are born from women. So it makes sense, even from common sense biology. Back at the presbyter, on the mosaic of 16 vices and virtues of men, there was a depiction of Adam and Eve, with the tree and the serpent. Regarding the serpent, the tree of life is often displayed with a serpent on it. Egypt was referred to as the land of the tree and the serpent. The serpent meant wisdom, but the Egyptian hieroglyph for the female was the serpent, as it was in other cultures as well. So the serpent was a representation or symbol for the sacred or priestly female, the one who is the initiator. Adam and Eve, the tree of life, the mysterious serpent, and the temptation, the biting of the apple, are all derived from Egyptian sidereal myth. As stated previously, Egypt was known as the land of the tree and serpent, denoting that Egypt was the center of learning when it comes to the mysteries of the human body, the original Kabbalah, mystical androgyny, and the metasexual mysteries. So the Kabbalah is part of Jewish tradition that derived from Egypt, and is sometimes translated as mysticism or occult knowledge, and deals with the essence of God. On the Kabbalistic tree of life, there are 3 columns or 3 pillars. One is the pillar of mercy. Another is the pillar of severity or judgment. Then the center pillar, the pillar of equilibrium or the pillar of balance. This can be identified with the Egyptian goddess Ma'at. She was the mother of balance or straightness. That is why in iconography we see the goddess Ma'at behind the pharaoh with her hand up, almost like she's guiding him to walk straight. The 22 paths of the Tree of Life correspond to the 22 paths of the so-called Hebrew alphabet, but they also connect to the 22 cards of the major arcana in the tarot. If you look at a diagram where it shows the 22 major arcana cards on the paths of the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, you'll notice something really interesting. That in the middle column, all the paths are feminine cards: the Empress, the High Priestess, Temperance, and the World card, or the Universe card. 4 paths, and the cards that fit there are feminine cards of the tarot. The central column of the Kabbalistic Tree of Life is basically the feminine mysteries. Just to clarify, the feminine is different than female. The feminine can include the male because there's masculine females and feminine men. The feminine path, in mystical or metaphysical terms, doesn't just involve the female. The middle path represents nature, originally. There is another aspect that it represents, which is most importantly one of the features of the zodiac, and it is known as the circumpolar region, which is where the pole points. There's a region of space up there that has been sacred for many thousands of years, going back to the earliest dawn of time to the stellar cult. The stellar cult were fascinated by the movement of the pole through the 7 stations of the north, the 7 bright stars of the constellation Ursa Major. These 7 stars are known as the Big Dipper. Cancer is one of the highest constellations, so this circumpolar region is quite near Cancer. It contains Ursa Major, the Greater Bear, Ursa Minor, the Lesser Bear, and it contains one of the most important constellations of the stellar cult, which is Draco, the dragon, or the serpent. This area is literally a ring of space that is consecrated to the sacred female. In fact, in symbolism, when you see a ring or circle shape, this can be identified with the stellar cult and the circumpolar region consecrated to the sacred female, the uterus or womb of creation. In pre-dynastic times, the heavenly protector was not serpentine, but feminine in form. Her name was Taret, or Riret. She was a fertility goddess in the animal form of a hippopotamus. She was known as the Lady of Heaven. In the detail of the astronomical ceiling in the tomb of Seti I, the celestial form of Taret can be seen in the far right. We also see the sacred precinct and the animals that represent various circumpolar constellations, such as the crocodile representing the constellation of Draco. Personally, I've always felt like the Adam and Eve story was very questionable. I have found women are nearly always the bad guys, with very few exceptions in the biblical stories. Then there's the bit about blindly following unreasonable orders such as don't eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, Genesis 2-3. I don't know about you, but I love knowledge, and I will certainly eat of that tree as much as I wish and as much as I can. I am very interested in that tree. And by being interested in knowledge, it opens one's ability to become conversant with themselves through self-reflection. And through self-reflection, one can understand the things they may think, feel, or do that are not in alignment with what they may espouse they think, feel, or do. To self-reflect is a type of holy work. It is to understand one's own psyche, to then be able to obtain a better grasp on the evil that is out in the world. To be conversant with oneself, both good and bad aspects, sets up a better ability to do good work in the world. So it's preposterous to demand one not to seek knowledge in general, or to demand one not seek inward knowledge of both good and evil, in order to understand outward manifestations of good and evil. Demanding through threat of punishment that one not seek knowledge seems like a control mechanism in and of itself. And isn't that evil? As Socrates stated, the only good is knowledge, and the only evil is ignorance. The story, as it is passed to us in its current form, makes no sense at all. Why would an all-loving God behave badly and not want us to know the most essential part of our being, of our story, of who we are? And worse, punish us for wanting to know. For this, I have presented the previous information in a quest to understand, and found that the stories of such goddesses that I presented earlier, such as Ninmah, Inanna, Isis, Taaret, the Tree of Life, and the Serpent, are much older than the biblical stories. Secondly, each of the goddesses were represented with or as being the Tree of Life, and the serpent symbolized wisdom and transformation. Those qualities seem to me to be uplifting and powerful, not something to punish. But hey, that's just my feeling on it all. Through the works of scholars, Egyptologists, researchers, authors, and through one's own discernment, it can be concluded what the so-called tree of knowledge of good and evil possibly was. Michael Tessarian advises that through examining the inversion of the Genesis account, we can determine that the forbidden fruit was actually not fruit, and that the tree was not a tree. The tree was the celestial tree. The polar axis also known as the world tree of the universal garden that stretched between heaven and hell. Its fruits, golden apples, were the stars of the circumpolar region. The guarding serpent was the constellation of Draco. It was the mystery school of the heavens that was not meant to be approached. It was the sanctuary of the stars that was forbidden. It was astrology that had the power to intellectually and spiritually transform ordinary men and women. Next on the Tree of Life floor mosaic is a depiction of Cain and Abel. Cain and Abel, the first two sons of Adam and Eve, are significant figures in the biblical account of Genesis. Cain, the firstborn, was a farmer, and his brother Abel was a shepherd. The brothers made sacrifices, each from his own fields, to God. God had regard for Abel's offering, but had no regard for Cain's. Cain killed Abel, and God cursed Cain, sentencing him to a life of transience. Cain then dwelt in the land of Nod, where he built a city and fathered the line of descendants, beginning with Enoch. Their story has been interpreted through an astrological and astronomical lens, revealing connections to ancient Mesopotamian astronomy and mythology. Cain is associated with the planet Mars, symbolizing conflict, aggression, and bloodshed. Mars was considered a malevolent deity in ancient Mesopotamian astronomy, often linked with war and violence. Abel is connected to the planet Mercury, representing messenger, commerce, and negotiation. Mercury was revered as a benevolent deity associated with wisdom, eloquence, and diplomacy. God's acceptance of Abel's sacrifice and rejection of Cain's may be seen as a reflection of the astrological principle of planetary favoritism. In ancient Mesopotamian astrology, certain planets were considered more auspicious than others, influencing human affairs. Cain's jealousy and murder of Abel can be understood as a manifestation of the astrological concept of planetary oppositions. The conflicting energies of Mars, Cain, and Mercury, Abel, may have been seen as a cosmic struggle, with Cain's aggressive Mars-like nature ultimately prevailing over Abel's harmonious Mercury-like qualities. The story of Cain and Abel may be interpreted as a cosmic struggle between chaos, represented by Cain's Mars-like nature, and order, embodied by Abel's Mercury-like qualities. This dichotomy reflects the ancient Mesopotamian understanding of the universe as a balance between opposing forces. Cain's curse and exile can be seen as a karmic consequence of his actions, echoing the astrotheological notion that human deeds have cosmic repercussions. This idea is reflected in the biblical account, where Cain's descendants suffer a curse that ultimately leads to their destruction in the Great Flood. Here we have a depiction of King Arthur. The legendary King Arthur developed as a figure of international interest, largely through the popularity of Geoffrey of Monmouth's 12th century History of the Kings of Britain. Geoffrey depicted Arthur as a king of Britain who defeated the Saxons and established a large empire. Many elements and incidents that are now an integral part of the Arthurian story appear in Geoffrey's History of the Kings of Britain. This includes Arthur's father, Uther Pendragon, the magician Merlin, Arthur's wife Guinevere, the sword Excalibur, Arthur's conception at Tintagel, his final battle against Mordred at Camlon, and final rest in Avalon. The 12th century French writer Chrétien de Troyes, who added Lancelot and the Holy Grail to the story, began the genre of Arthurian romance that became a significant strand of medieval literature. In these French stories, the narrative focus often shifts from King Arthur himself to other characters, such as various Knights of the Round Table. Stars do tell stories. They are the silent narrators of ancient myths and legends that have shaped our understanding of the universe. Some researchers espouse that Arthur is much older than the medieval tales written about him, that he may find clues in the stars about his early existence and genealogy. Arth means the bear, so naturally we will look for him among the celestial bears. Polaris, the North Star, our pole star at the present time, is part of Ursa Minor, the small bear, the still point around which the northern heavens turn. Like Arthur, this guiding star never sets and does not disappear with the change in season. One of the many names for Ursa Major, Large Bear, is Arthur's wain, his chariot, which he rides round the still point of the pole star in the sky. The role of the pole star passes from one star to another because of the tilt of the Earth. The precession of the equinoxes takes about 25,770 years to complete a cycle. Therefore, a single star typically holds that place for many centuries. It is estimated that Polaris became the pole star about 3400 BCE. Before this, the still point of the northern sky was a serpent called Thuban, found in the constellation of Draco, the dragon. Arthur's father was Uther Pendragon, the head or chief dragon. At one time, the constellation Draco appeared much larger, and the bears were held within his wings. This could explain the theme of defeating the dragon in many Arthurian stories. As the star in the tail of the bear became central to the northern skies, was this reflected in stories of a royal bear, Arthur, who had replaced a dragon, Uther Pendragon? Arthur's father, Uther Pendragon, abdicated his central place as the star around which the heavens revolve. But just as in the Arthurian story, this did not happen all at once. Arthur, who had been raised by a foster family, had to prove his right to kingship. Both bear and dragon represent earth energy, but like Thuban, the dragon has become more difficult to access. Arthur was the heir of an ancient tribe, the Dragon Clan, and the founder of another tribe, the Bear Clan, now living under a new pole star. Merlin foretells all this to Uther, Arthur's father, from a cosmic event. To make this mythology more complex and intriguing, King Arthur, the mythological ancestor, has no legitimate descendants, no heir, unless it is all of the British people. Instead, he returns, like the sun at the winter solstice, sometimes called Alban Arthur, the light of Arthur. Next on the Tree of Life floor mosaic are the 12 months and the 12 corresponding zodiacs. Each one displays a scene corresponding to each month and the symbol connected to each zodiac. The floor mosaic zodiac in the Otranto Cathedral is not the only zodiacal symbolism I have encountered during my visit to various churches during my travels. Here are a few examples of other zodiacal symbolism within churches that I have visited. One might ask why zodiacal symbolism can be found inside churches, seeing as the church often espouses that astrology is taboo. Well, these symbols represent the constellations, which have been used to mark the passage of time and seasons for practically all of human history. This can be seen through astrotheology, a theology founded on the observation or knowledge of the celestial bodies, to which is vastly ancient. Ancient civilizations had one religion. That religion was based on the understanding of the astrological movements of our solar system and the connection and influences that each planet has on each other and beyond. This celestial knowledge is the basis and origin for all of our legends, fairy tales, nursery rhymes, myths, and folklore. It is also the pure science, developed by the very enlightened, wise and ancient priesthood, that left behind for us scrolls, hieroglyphs, tablets, symbols, and the holy books of all world religions. The language was veiled in allegory and symbolism, and much of it was deliberately done to keep the higher truths from the masses. We will find that beneath what we have assumed was a literal and historical Jesus Christ, there lies a treasure of allegories and symbolism of the sun, stars, constellations, and their path in the heavens. Below the months and the zodiac on the Tree of Life floor mosaic is a depiction of Noah and the flood. The story of Noah and the flood is an account in the biblical book of Genesis, chapters 6 to 9. According to the narrative, God decided to destroy the earth and its inhabitants due to their wickedness and violence. However, God found one righteous man, Noah, and instructed him to build an ark to save himself, his family, and 2 of every kind of animal from the impending flood. Age of the Storm presents a fascinating theory regarding the story of Noah and the flood from an astrotheological standpoint. That it is an allegorical tale about the sun and its path through the sky. Like Solomon, Jesus, and others in the Old and New Testament, and other similar characters from religious and ancient stories, Noah was the personification of the sun. With solar characters, there is most often a focus on a purity of character. In astrology, the year begins at the sign of Aries, traditionally fixed at the spring equinox. The story says that God delivered the warning of an impending flood on the 10th day of the 2nd month, which places it in the sign of Taurus. 7 days later, on the 17th day, rain begins to fall for 40 days and 40 nights. At this point, the Sun enters the intersection of the ecliptic and the Milky Way when viewed from here on Earth. In many biblical stories, the Milky Way is viewed as rain or a river. This marks the beginning of the flood. The story goes on to describe Noah entering the ark with 2 of each animal. Following the path of the Milky Way, below the ecliptic from the position of the Sun, there is a ship constellation called Argo Navis, which in the Bible is Noah's Ark. The Sun then moves through the constellation Gemini, whose motif is the twins, symbolizing double or duality. This explains why there are 2 of each animal entering the ark. Each animal of the zodiac is represented by its ruling planet, crossing this point. During the metaphorical flood period, the ship would have been seen rising gradually up over the horizon from our point of view here on Earth. The Bible describes the floodwaters remaining on the earth for 150 days. The end of the rainfall brings us to the second intersection of the Milky Way and the path of the ecliptic between Scorpio and Sagittarius. This occurrence marks the floodwaters receding. Noah then sends out a raven and a dove. The raven is the constellation Corvus, which is located close to Hydra. The dove is a dove-shaped constellation called Columba. From here, the floodwaters apparently dried up gradually until the 27th day of the second month. The Book of Enoch describes in detail events before the flood. One such event were the Nephilim, or giants. Not surprisingly, these giant beings refer to the giant humanoid constellations such as Perseus, Hercules, and Orion. In Aramaic tradition, the constellation Orion is called Nephilah. The Book of Enoch contains a plethora of astronomical and astrological references. Many different cultures around the world have accounts of a world flood or deluge. Occult researcher and author Michael Tessarian, in his books, The Irish Origins of Civilization and Astrotheology and Sidereal Mythology, has the following to say regarding Noah and the Ark. On the left-hand side of the Tree of Life floor mosaic, below Noah and the flood, is a depiction of the Tower of Babel. The Tower of Babel is an origin myth and parable in the book of Genesis in the Old Testament or Hebrew Bible that takes place after the deluge or flood, meant to explain the existence of different languages and cultures. According to the story, a united human race speaking a single language migrates to Shinar or Sumer in lower Mesopotamia, where they agree to build a great city with a tower that would reach the sky. Yahweh, observing these efforts and remarking on humanity's power and unity, confounds their speech so that they can no longer understand each other and scatters them around the world, leaving the city unfinished. Some modern scholars have associated the Tower of Babel with known historical structures and accounts, particularly from ancient Mesopotamia. The most widely attributed inspiration is a ziggurat, a type of terraced step pyramid dedicated to the god Marduk in Babylon, which in Hebrew was called Babel. A similar story is also found in the ancient Sumerian legend involving Enlil, who was first attested as the chief deity of the Sumerian pantheon, but he was later worshipped by the Akkadians, Babylonians, and the Assyrians. Yahweh, who was known as Enlil, built his own tower first, called Duran-Ki, which means bound, heaven, earth. He leaves, and then the humans build a similar structure. When Enlil returns, he sees that the humans are building a tower, mimicking what their advanced culture had built. Enlil, Yahweh, sees that humans are able to achieve what they put their heart and soul into. He destroys the tower, just like in the biblical story. Enlil professes, "My seed shall not abide in man. His year shall be 120. And that also was in the biblical text in Genesis 6:3, at a time when the destruction of man was about to happen in the great deluge, where God told Noah the following. When viewed from an astrotheological perspective, the Tower of Babel is seen as a temple dedicated to the study of the planets and their secrets. This interpretation emphasizes the tower's connection to ancient Mesopotamian astrology and the quest for knowledge and understanding of the celestial bodies. The biblical account of the Tower of Babel mentions 9 generations of humanity before the flood. The number 9 is often associated with completion, fulfillment, and the integration of opposites. This numerical significance may be seen as reflecting the tower's role as a symbol of human aspiration and the quest for unity and understanding. Next to the Tower of Babel is the Animals and Mythological Creatures Mosaic. Below the Tower of Babel and the Animals and Mythological Creatures Mosaics, we find a depiction of a deer and the Roman goddess Diana, also known as Artemis, in Greek mythology. In ancient Roman mythology, Diana, the goddess of the hunt, was often depicted with deer. The deer held a special significance for Diana, representing her connection to the natural world and her role as a protector of the forest and its creatures. The deer symbolizes fertility, abundance, and purity, reflecting Diana's association with childbirth, agriculture, and the cycles of nature. The goddess Diana's sacred bond with deer also underscored her power over life and death, as well as her ability to transform and metamorphose. In Ovid's Metamorphosis, Actaeon, a young hunter, accidentally stumbles upon Diana, bathing naked with her nymphs. Enraged, Diana transforms Actaeon into a deer, and he is then killed by his own dogs. In another mythological context, Diana appears as a goddess who intervenes to spare Iphigenia, the daughter of Agamemnon, from being sacrificed to her. According to some versions, Diana replaces Iphigenia with a deer, saving her life. Diana's association with the hunt and chastity connects her to Actaeon's story, where she transforms him into a deer as punishment for his intrusion. Iphigenia's story involving her near sacrifice and subsequent salvation is linked to Diana's intervention, highlighting the goddess's power to alter fate. The myths showcase Diana's complex character, embodying both maternal and punitive aspects, as she navigates the delicate balance between human and divine realms. Here again, on the Tree of Life floor mosaic, is a depiction symbolizing the theme of metamorphosis and balance. Here we have a mosaic of Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great was the king of the Greek Empire in the 4th century BC. He is best known for his military exploits, but throughout the centuries, his legacy has become steeped in myth and legend. One such medieval legend is called Flying Alexander, in which he wishes to see the whole world, first descending into the depths of the ocean, then wanting to see the view from above. To do this, he harnessed large birds or griffins, and in some versions he is sitting on a seat or in a cage between the griffins. To entice them to keep flying higher, he placed meat on skewers, which he held above their heads. This ascent frightened the king, so he prayed to return to the ground safely. When he returned to the ground, he founded a city upon the spot where he landed. The story is fictional, but the basis for the story is most likely not. Since time immemorial, flight has been on the mind of humanity, and Alexander's curiosity toward the heavens would have been a common occurrence back then. The need to escape the surface of the earth and achieve flight is a primal human need, and the endurance of this and other legends like this symbolize this need. Next is a depiction of a chessboard. In the game of chess, the board represents the turning of day and night. The king, which can only move one square at a time, represents the sun. The The queen, which has more latitude, is the wavering moon. This was created by the stellar cult, who also worked with the right brain modalities of expression and comprehension. Finally, on the Tree of Life floor mosaic, there is a depiction of the trunk of the tree, resting on two elephants, serving as the foundation of the tree, representing strength and stability. On the left aisle, there is a representation of the Last Judgment through the use of figurations of hell and paradise. Now we will head over to the right aisle, which houses the Tree of Redemption floor mosaic that is dominated by biblical and mythological giants. Also on the right aisle is the Chapel of the Martyrs and the crypt. In 1480, the Otranto Cathedral was stormed by the Turks, who had besieged the city, and the clerics and civilians who were inside were killed. The building was turned into a mosque, and the frescoes from the 13th century were mostly destroyed. The town was liberated a year later, and the church restored and reconsecrated. It was granted basilica status in 1945 by Pope Pio XII. The chapel was instituted by Ferdinand of Naples in honor of the martyrs of Otranto, the 800 people who were killed by the Turks for not renouncing their faith. Their bones are arranged inside the chapel. Lastly, on our tour of the Otranto Cathedral, we have the rose window. A rose window's primary function was to admit light and serve as a decorative element. Medieval thinkers attributed deeper meanings to its design and construction. Rose windows were meant to explain universal laws of the cosmos and the human psyche. The intricate tracery and geometric patterns were believed to represent the harmony between the macrocosm, the universe, and the microcosm, humanity. In essence, the human body and the affairs of humans were like the universe, on a smaller scale. Many contemporary authors speak about Jungian psychology and the rose window as a mandala, which represents the expression of human aspiration towards wholeness, balance, and coherence. Ending our tour with the rose window brings together the entirety of the theme of balance and metamorphosis within the various depictions on the Tree of Life floor mosaic in the Otranto Cathedral. It symbolizes the bond between living beings, the natural world, and the divine, showing that balance is not a fixed state, but a dynamic process of growth, pruning, and renewal. May we cultivate this wisdom within our own lives.